My beloved Madridistas, welcome back to the channel. Okay, this is going to be, I think, one of the more interesting videos I've ever put out there. Okay, today we're going to talk about what the whole world is talking about, what the rest of Europe is obsessed with. How the hell does Real Madrid do it? You know, what is going on? How does this club do what it does, which is just unbelievable. And you all know the numbers. We don't need to repeat them. Just extraordinary. So listen, this isn't like the Coca-Cola formula. I'm not giving up any secrets. It's not like you can write it down and go replicate it anywhere else. I mean, this stuff takes decades to embed in an institution. But I'm going to give you my best guess. And look, I'm 56 years old. I've been watching Real Madrid since I was about 6. So I'm going to give you my best guess of kind of how this all comes together, how Master Chef Florentino Perez has managed to put these ingredients and mix them in the right proportion. But I'm going to give you my best guess of, how this works and how this stuff happens. Okay, we're going to talk about, we'll talk about the different components. We'll talk about the sporting aspect. So we'll talk about style of play as well as player scouting. Then we'll talk about the organizational structure. And then finally, we'll talk about the most important thing of all, which is obviously the culture and the mentality of the club. So let me give you my thoughts on how this incredible sauce is made. Thank you for joining me. As always, let's get started. All right, my Madridista family, welcome back. Okay, let's talk about this. This is, absolutely fascinating. Let's talk about sort of all the things that I think come together to kind of create this magic. Let's talk about the sporting aspect first. So first of all, in terms of style of play, and this is something that you kind of notice over the decades and decades, especially when you're watching different leagues and clubs around the world. Real Madrid has never been married to a particular style or a particular manager, okay? This is a club that has always been very much driven by players. So if you think, for example, just to give you an example, in the English Premier League, when you think about sort of, the Invincibles, in the late 80s or the era of Arsène Wenger, you kind of associate that generation, that style of play with a manager in a very powerful way. Or you think about Man United and, Alex Ferguson. There's such a very powerful identity. The play is always kind of seems to be connected to a manager. Look at Man City now and Guardiola. It's like you can't talk about Man City without talking about Guardiola. This has never been the case in Real Madrid. Real Madrid has always been a club that has been for and about the players and for and about the skill of the players. It's never been restrictive in any way. It's never really adhered to any one particular dogma of play or one particular style. So you'll notice that over the years, it's about giving players flexibility to show their skill. This has always been very much the way Real Madrid has been run. Now, it's a team, in terms of play, Real Madrid loves to attack and have very attacking players. Like, this has always been the case. But it's, again, it's a team that is not necessarily, married to a particular style of play. I mean, it's all about flexibility, adaptability, and the goal is always to win. So it's a club that can defend and play the counter, a club that can attack and dominate possession, depending on the rival. It's also a club that doesn't rely on one particular type of, the short passing is combined with long passing. I mean, it's never a club that only plays a certain way. Sometimes you play the wings and cross, and sometimes you sort of do quick give and goes down the middle. It's again, very, very flexible, but the whole idea has always been to let the players shine, to give the players flexibility to show their skill and their talent. So that's one thing. I think the adaptability and the flexibility, which are recurring themes, are very much a way that this club approaches play. Now, this is also visible in scouting. I mean, if you look at, again, it's all based on flexibility and adaptability. And not just in terms of play, but even in terms of the financial reality of the club. Now, if you remember, compare the Galácticos era, where we were buying very well-known, very expensive players at the prime age, compared to now, where we're getting the youngest talent in the world, giving them all the resources. So these are completely diametrically opposed approaches. But again, they reflect an adaptability and a flexibility depending on the circumstance. Now, when Florentino became Perez the first time around, when he brought Figo and did all, eventually Zizou and all these people, I remember a famous quote. He said, Real Madrid's financial problems have nothing to do with costs. They have to do with revenues. And he understood that the business model relied on lifting revenues through getting the best players in the world and broadening the merchandising and the branding, et cetera. So at that point, what was required was to bring the best players, that were already developed, already big names. Now the financial reality is different. We can't compete with PSG or City on a dollar-for-dollar basis, so we have to be smarter. We have to get the younger players. There's a flexibility in terms of the approach that reflects that reality, but also in terms of style of player. If you look at the dichotomy between power and technique, right? You look at Brazilian football, it's incredibly technical, but not as powerful as, say, the Premier League. Real Madrid has never been married to either. We can bring players in that bring completely different capabilities and completely different styles of play and different attributes. So, if you think about it, for example, the Premier League, all the players, the majority tend to be very physical, very tall, very fast. And that's probably a criteria before you even touch the ball. Very different in Spain. Here, we're more into technique, and look at Messi and Iniesta and guys like Rodrigo and Brahim. And Real Madrid is absolutely open to anything. So we're not married to a type of player. We can have players. Look at Toni Kroos. Toni Kroos is neither a particularly good dribbler, neither fast nor particularly strong, but the most brilliant midfield mind ever, and one of the greatest passers, the greatest vision ever. So it's being able to appreciate the different components that can bring different things to the squad. And again, it's about flexibility and adaptability, because the objective is to win. It's not to play a certain way. The objective is always to win. And in order to win, you have to read different situations, different matches, different seasons, different periods. So that's another thing that I think is very important in terms of scouting. Now, if you look at the organizational situation, what I think brings an enormous amount of clarity and vision is, if you look at the organizational structure of Real Madrid, and Mourinho was talking about this after the Champions League final. I don't know if you guys saw that interview, but Mourinho said it's very simple in Real Madrid. You have Florentino Perez, José Ángel Sánchez. You have the president. You have José Ángel Sánchez, who kind of executes, the vision. And then below that, you have Yuni Garafat, who's in charge of, scouting and finding talent, and also training and following their progress. And then you have Ancelotti. Now, that's it. There are no competing powers within the organization. So the situation you had with Xavi and Deco at Barca, that one guy wanted to play De Jong, the other one didn't, that cannot exist. Everybody has a role. It's very clearly defined, and everybody knows what that role is. There are no competing powers at all. There's a crystal clear structure of who does what, and it's based on transparency but consensus. So when I say that, is transparency meaning that everybody can contribute their opinion to a situation, whether it's bringing a player or anything at all. Anybody can contribute, and there's communication transparency, but in the end, there's consensus. Once you decide on something, the entire team moves forward with that decision. There's no going back and forth. There's no confusion. There's no, he said this, the other one said that. Absolutely not. There's once communication is, everybody gives their opinion and you come to a decision, there's absolute consensus as to how you move forward. So there's a lot of clarity in terms of the direction of the club. Another very important thing at the organizational level, there is zero room for corruption. Okay? Zero. There's no margin for any shady business. So, for example, one of the clauses that was recently incorporated into Real Madrid, the sort of bylaws, is that to become Real Madrid president, you now need to be able to personally guarantee up to 15% of the club's revenues. So now that does narrow the field down, because it means that right now, if Real Madrid generates about €1 billion a year, you would have to be able to personally guarantee $150 million. So now that sounds a bit draconian and a bit unfair, but what it does do is it gets rid of you're not going to have, back in the 80s it was different. It was a bit shadier, You had Ramon Mendoza. Things felt a little bit shadier. But now it does not feel that way. Florentino's a self-made multi-billionaire. He doesn't need, this is the love of his life. He doesn't need to steal from the club. But situations like Bartomeu, who was bringing all these players to Barça that the team didn't need, paying incredible prices, and then you find out, Laporta finds out later that there was a shell company taking up to 30% of transfer fees. That kind of shady crap will not happen in Real Madrid. And now this permeates the entire organization, because another incredibly important aspect of this is that there's no nepotism, okay? There's no, I think Xavi's physical trainer was like a childhood friend or something. There's none of this stuff. There's excellence at every level of the organization, and the person that you hire for every function is the best, okay? You have to just be the best. So Pintus is there, not because he's friends with anyone, because he's the best. And from the top to the bottom, whether it's the gardeners, the guys that run the sprinkler systems, the guys that are in charge of making sure everybody has socks and shoes and their kit, and the kit guy, or the massage teams that travel with them, the chef, the people that run the facilities, the training facilities, making sure that there's always the latest technology. It is excellence from absolutely top to bottom. And there is no favoritism. There's no kind of buddy stuff going on. It is excellence from top to bottom. So at the organizational level, I think that's really, really important. Now, all of this spills into the most important thing of all, which is all of this feeds into the culture and the mentality of the club. So the underlying focus, and you can watch millions of interviews over the decades, and every player will say this, the only thing that matters in Real Madrid is winning. It's the only thing that matters. Don't talk to me about how you played. Don't tell me about how many goals you scored. The goal is to win, and this permeates everything. Now, the belief that the player has when he steps on the pitch is based on excellence. The excellence that has been demanded of him, the excellence that he has seen in the organization from the moment he arrived, the excellence you train your best every day. You play your best every day. And when you step on the pitch, you know that you have prepared more than anybody. You're willing to fight more than anybody. And that this changes the attitude that you have when you go on the pitch. There's a belief, and that you're never done improving. You have an obligation to always get better. There is no such thing as, okay, we got there, we're the best, That there is no complacency. You demand more, you have to improve always. And this is a constant feeling among the players and the staff and the entire organization. So, yeah, by the way, you never believe you're magical. You don't believe, that great line in Scarface, don't get high on your own supply. Don't believe your own nonsense. You have to play every match, respect every rival, and train absolutely at top level. And you step on the pitch with 100% commitment every single time. And, it's also very important that these players also believe very strongly in history, in football pedigree. And they know that when they step on the pitch, they're representing something that is different, something that is special. And they have a responsibility to the legacy of the club. And they know the power of the shirt. They know that it makes them better, that it has made them better. And they know that the impact that it has on the rival as well. So, all of this, translate, and about never giving up. This is, one of the cardinal, basis of Real Madrid. You never, ever give up. And that it doesn't matter what the score is. You never give up, and everything is possible. So, all of these things come together, very difficult to describe, and I don't know, exactly how much each of these weighs, but, I think these are all really, really important things, from top to bottom, as I've said many times in my video, that just creates an atmosphere of excellence and an atmosphere of confidence, an atmosphere of belief. So anyway, listen, those are my thoughts on sort of how this stuff happens, which is magic. But let's keep enjoying it for many, many more years to come, hopefully. But thank you for joining me. I'll be giving you guys some comments on the Euro and the Copa America in terms of how our players are doing. So look forward to that. But thanks for joining me. And as always, a la Madrid.